Assalamu alaikum students, this is Irfan sir here. I hope you are all good. We are discussing immune system, and in the immune system we are discussing the second line of defense, and we have discussed interferons and their role and function in the immune system. Now there is a natural killer cell. Natural killer cell is basically, it's also termed as a null cell, or you can call it also effector lymphocyte. Null cell, it is called a null cell because it is devoid of, it does not have any receptor like BCR and TCR. So BCR, B cell receptor, or that is a TCR, T cell receptor, they are not present basically on the natural killer cell, and it does not require them to recognize the antigen, to recognize the pathogen, to recognize the virus infected cell. It does not require this set of receptors, so it is null of these receptors. That's the reason you call it as a null cell. And now listen carefully. So natural killer cell, it does not basically phagocytose the pathogen or a virus infected cell. What it is doing, let's first see. It contains granules, although the number of the granules is relatively less as compared to the granulocytes. It contains granules, and these granules, they are rich in perforins, pore forming proteins, very dangerous proteins, right, killing machinery of what natural killer cells. It also contains very important enzymes, granzymes. Granzymes are basically serine proteases. They are the proteases, right? They are the proteases. Proteases are basically the enzymes which digest the proteins. It is the killing machinery of the natural killer cell, using the granules, using these perforins and the proteases to kill or to destroy the target cell, right? In addition to the granules, natural killer cell also secretes cytokines. And which cytokine it secretes? It secretes interferon gamma. It also secretes tumor necrosis factor alpha. TNF alpha, tumor INF gamma, interferon gamma, we have seen that. They are the interferons, they are antiviral, right? But this is tumor necrosis factor alpha. Tumor necrosis factor has multiple roles to play. We have seen that it has a very defined role in the inflammation. It also acts as a natural pyrogen there, and it is very important to understand it induces cell death. It induces programmed cell death or apoptosis when it is thrown into the target cell. I hope it's clear up to this. Now, this natural killer cell, it is stimulated by interferon alpha, interferon beta, and it is also stimulated by interleukin 12, right? Interleukin 12 also stimulates the natural killer cell, the killer cell, right? Now, how it is going to kill the cell? Let's understand it here. It induces death in the tumor cells, right? The cancerous cells, the tumor cells, and also it induces death in the virus infected cells. Let's understand. For example, if this is a virus infected cell, right, in red color, virus infected cell, and let us see, this is here a NKC, that is a natural killer cell, right? This is a natural killer cell here, and this is a virus infected cell. So first of all, what happens here, the natural killer cell, it adheres with the target cell. It adheres with the target cell. It attaches with the target cell like this, right? And then it is followed by degranulation. Then these granules burst. What is releasing here? Perforins. These perforins, they form pores in the membrane of the target cell. So here it is a target cell, and this target cell can be a tumor cell, right? It can be, yes please, it can be a virus infected cell. And here is an NKC, natural killer cell. Natural killer cell. So what is the first step? Natural killer cell. Natural killer cell, first it adheres, it attaches with the target cell, right? And then degranulation occurs. What is releasing? Perforins. Perforins, they form a pore in the membrane, right? And through these pores, these proteases and this tumor necrosis alpha, right, they reach into, yes please, these proteases and these tumor necrosis alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha, it reaches into the target cell, and here the cell death is basically activated or stimulated, and the cell dies. The second important thing is, once the pore is formed, right, it can also undergo osmotic lysis. The cell can also undergo the osmotic lysis. Why? Because through these pores, we can also call them as aqueous channels. Through these pores, the fluid, the surrounding fluid, the tissue fluid, the surrounding fluid, it can enter into the target cell, and once the fluid enters into the target cell, the cell will undergo lysis, and that is called as osmotic lysis. And what is this? Tumor necrosis alpha, right? Tumor necrosis factor alpha. And what is this? Proteases. They destroy, they basically induce the cell death. Tumor necrosis factor alpha induces the cell death in the target cell. Proteases can damage the proteins, digest the proteins inside, and when the fluid enters into the target cell, that fluid can lead to what? Osmotic lysis. So I hope it's clear. Now, after this, let's understand the last component of the innate immune system, the second line of defense, that is a complement system. Let's understand what is complement system. Let's understand what is complement system. Complement system is actually a set of, it is simply a set of constitutive proteins. Constitutive proteins. It is a set of constitutive proteins, right? You can also call them as complementary proteins. Complementary proteins, right? Now these complementary proteins, or you can call them as constitutive proteins. What does constitutive and complementary means here? So complement system, it consists of a set of constitutive proteins, or you can call them as complementary proteins. Constitutive proteins means they are already present in the blood. They are already formed in the blood, irrespective whether the pathogen is present in the body or absent in the body, because it is an innate immune system. It is present by birth, right? That is the reason it is called as, these proteins are called as constitutive proteins. They are formed, they are there in the blood in advance. Complementary proteins, why they are called complementary proteins? Because they help, or we can use the term they complement. Complement here means they help. They help immune system. They help immune system and inflammatory response. They help immune system and inflammatory response, hence we call them as complementary proteins, right? So now complement system, it consists of more than 20 proteins. More than 20 proteins work in this system. We simply designate them as C1, C2, C3, C4, right? So C1 means complement protein 1, complement protein 2, C stands for complement, and this is the numerical sequence, right? So we simply designate them as C1, C2, C3 and C4. Some of them have even subcomponents, like C1, it has C1R, C1S and C1Q is there, right? C1R, C1S and there is C1Q. Now these complement proteins, they are interdependent, right? They are interdependent on each other. What does it mean they are interdependent on each other? It means that the activation of the first, if complement protein 1 is activated, it will lead to the activation of the other, and that will in turn lead to the activation of the third, right? So they are interdependent in this sense that the activation of one complement protein depends on the activation of another complement protein. In this way, a chain reaction occurs, a cascade of reaction occurs. Eventually, whole complement system is activated. I hope it's clear up to this, right? Eventually, what will happen? A cascade of reaction occurs, a chain reaction occurs. C1 leads to the activation of the C2 and in turn C3, right? And the whole complement system eventually gets activated against the pathogen, against the microbe, the infectious agent present in the body. I hope it's clear up to this. Now listen beta. Complement system, actually one thing important point here, it functions both in specific immunity as well as in non-specific immunity. It functions both in specific immunity as well as, yes, non-specific immunity. What does this mean? We already are aware about these terms. Specific immunity here means it functions in acquired immunity. Yes. And non-specific immunity means it functions in innate immunity. So what we are discussing this time, what's the topic under discussion? We are discussing innate immunity, right? But it does function in acquired immunity. So that's the reason I told you it functions in specific immunity as well as in non-specific immunity. Specific immunity means it functions in acquired immune response, and non-specific immunity means it functions in innate immune response, right? See, this complement system, it functions, or it is activated through two pathways. It gets activated or it functions through two pathways. There are two pathways, right? Number one is classical pathway. Classical pathway. So complement system functions, gets activated through two pathways. One is called classical pathway, another is called alternate pathway. Another is called alternate pathway, right? So it functions in two pathways, classical pathway and alternate pathway. Now what is the difference between the two pathways? Complement system functioning through classical pathway involves the acquired immunity. That is the difference. Stick to understand the difference between the two. Classical pathway, right? Complement system functions through classical pathway, gets activated through classical pathway. Involves, yes please, involves acquired immunity. Involves acquired immunity, or we can call it third line of defense. Third line of, yes, defense, right? It involves acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is a third line of defense. Or we can say directly it involves antibodies. Antibodies, right? And antibodies or antibodies, they are the part of acquired immunity. It is yet to discuss. We have not discussed it yet, what acquired immunity, right? Now, as far as alternate pathway is concerned, when complement system is activated through alternate pathway, when complement system is functioning through, yes, functioning through alternate pathway, it involves actually direct interaction. It involves direct interaction between, yes, between the microbe and complement protein, right? So complement system and microbe is directly involved in which pathway? In the alternate pathway. So one thing must be clear. So complement system functioning through, activating through alternate pathway involves direct interaction between microbe pathogen and the complement protein. Hence, this is a part of what? Innate immunity. This is a part of innate immunity, right? So our topic is complement system functioning through alternate pathway, right? Involves direct interaction between microbes and complement proteins. And this pathway is a part of what? Innate immunity. And classical pathway means here complement system functioning or activating through what? Classical pathway. What it is doing here? It involves acquired immunity or third line of defense, or it involves antibodies. So we have not discussed yet acquired immunity, right? So we will understand complement system activation through alternate pathway. What does it mean? That is direct interaction between the microbe and the complement protein, or that is what is, it is a part of what? Innate immunity, right? So we have to discuss here complement system activation through classical pathway, complement system activation through alternate pathway. But what's the topic under discussion? Are we discussing acquired immunity, or we are discussing this time innate? We are discussing, yes please, innate immunity, right? There is a direct interaction. And we will also see how classical pathway activates what? Complement system. So now we have understood complement system. It is a set of more than 20 proteins present in the blood or plasma, right? They are the plasma proteins. They are already present there, right? Hence we can call them as constitutive proteins. They are already present there, and you simply designate as C1, C2, C3, C4, right? There's a numerical sequence there, and they are interdependent, means activation of one leads to activation of another complement protein. So they are very much interdependent on each other. And most important point, the complement system functions both in specific as well as in non-specific defense mechanisms. Specific means here acquired immunity. Non-specific here means innate immunity, right? Now the complement system, it functions through how many pathways? Two pathways. One is classical pathway, another is alternate pathway. Classical pathway means here, yes please, complement system activation through classical pathway involves acquired immunity or third line of defense, or it involves directly what? Antibodies, because antibodies are a part of what? They are the part of the acquired immunity. So classical pathway means we have to use, yes please, acquired immune response, acquired immunity, third line of defense should be there. Alternate pathway, activation of complement system through alternate pathway does not involve any innate, it does not involve any component of the immune system, because it is direct interaction between the microbe and the complement protein. Hence this is a part of what? Innate immunity. I hope up to this is everything is clear up to this, right? So in the next video lecture I will be discussing the pathways, complement system activation through the different pathways, right? So see you in the next video. Take care of yourself, stay blessed, stay at home, right? May Allah protect us from this COVID-19 disease soon. So see you in the next video. Allah Hafiz.